We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation.
The NBA has seen its share of scandals, but nothing on this scale. Imagine FBI raids, mafia involvement, 500 players under investigation, sponsors worth billions abandoning the league, and a Hall of Fame coach being arrested. Now there are rumors the league itself is facing bankruptcy. In this report, we will cover the entire story from the initial raid to the league's eventual collapse.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra.
The raid that stunned the basketball world occurred on the morning of October 23, 2025. It began as a normal NBA game day until federal agents raided homes in Oregon, Florida, and Nevada. By afternoon, major news outlets were all running the same headline: the NBA was bankrupt after sponsors fled due to a gambling scandal. In a coordinated effort across 11 states, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York took down what they described as a massive criminal enterprise involving both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra.
Talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation.
Among the more than 30 people indicted were Chauncey Billups, the 2004 Finals MVP and head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and Terry Rozier, the dynamic Miami Heat guard with a $96 million contract. They weren't charged with fixing games by missing shots. They were charged with selling confidential information, turning locker room conversations into profitable bets. Federal authorities uncovered two interconnected schemes that blurred the distinction between professional sports and organized crime. The first, known as Operation Royal Flush, was a fraudulent poker operation supported by New York's Bonanno, Gambino, Lucchese, and Genovese crime families. It operated from the Hamptons to Las Vegas, utilizing high-tech cheating devices like X-ray poker tables, special contact lenses to read marked cards, and hacked card shufflers that transmitted the deck's order to remote collaborators. Over a 6-year period, victims were defrauded of more than $715 million. Prosecutors alleged Billups served as a celebrity enticement, using his fame to attract wealthy individuals to these private games. His participation gave the games an air of legitimacy, but they were actually sophisticated setups for fraud. The second investigation, Operation Nothing But Bet, focused on an insider betting network that ran from December 2022 to March. Players and coaches would leak non-public information, such as injuries, rest schedules, or strategic adjustments, to gamblers who then placed substantial prop bets. A single tip about a player's limited game time could result in six-figure earning. At the press conference in Manhattan, FBI Director Kash Patel was blunt.
I know everybody that's at play, and I don't like to sit up here and be hypocritical about certain things.
He described the operation as mind-boggling and confirmed that agents had confiscated altered card shufflers, cryptocurrency wallets, and weapons. Standing with him were NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, Homeland Security representatives, and U.S. Attorney Joseph Nacella, who stated, "Your winning streak has ended. Your luck has run out." Court documents revealed that 3 individuals, Billups, former player coach Damon Jones, and betting technician Eric Ernest, were involved in both schemes. They faced charges of wire fraud and money laundering, each carrying a potential sentence of up to 20 years. At the league's headquarters, the phones were ringing incessantly. Nike suspended its apparel deal with the Blazers. DraftKings stopped all NBA prop betting, and FanDuel removed its ads featuring Rozier. Market experts at Front Office Sports projected a potential $2.3 billion loss in sponsorship revenue if major advertisers backed out. That night on Inside the NBA, the mood was one of shocked disbelief. Shaq's voice was heavy with emotion as he recalled the league's mandatory anti-gambling training sessions. "Every year they would give us forums on what and what not to do," he said, concluding, "When the FBI comes knocking, they already have you." Charles Barkley countered co-host Kenny Smith, dismissing the idea that addiction was the cause. "These dudes are stupid," he declared. "You can't fix games under any circumstance." This exchange went viral, garnering over 40 million views on X in just 24 hours. The evidence indicated that the conspirators viewed the NBA schedule as a financial market. When Rozier sent a text saying "shoulder tweet, taking it easy tonight," gamblers placed large underbets on his points and assists for the Hornets-Pelicans game on March 23, 2023. He played for less than 10 minutes, and the bets resulted in over $200,000 in winnings. The following evening, Portland rested 4 starters against Chicago and lost by 28 points. Bettors who had received advance information from a source in Oregon, identified as co-conspirator 8, believed to be Billups, profited from both the point spread and the team's total score. Federal documents also mentioned a third leak from Damon Jones, who allegedly provided information about LeBron James's undisclosed foot injury before a Lakers-Bucks game on February 9th. These leaks collectively formed a betting network worth millions, focusing not on game outcomes but on small specific events that most fans would not notice. The poker scheme was even more sinister. When victims were reluctant to pay their debts, mob enforcers resorted to violence. One gambler was reportedly held at gunpoint over a rigged card shuffler valued at $30,000. Another received threatening texts that revealed his family's whereabouts. FBI evidence included photos of a dismantled X-ray table, confirming the existence of technology that was once thought to be a myth. Agents described the operation as a marriage of celebrity and Cosa Nostra. What started as high-end game nights in Miami and the Hamptons transformed into extortion operations run by 4 mafia families. Even seasoned law enforcement officials were stunned by the extent of professional athletes' involvement in mob activities. By evening, the NBA's broadcast partners were in crisis. ESPN pulled that night's episode of Countdown, and TNT initiated an emergency legal review. Meanwhile, Adam Silver held a 9 p.m. conference call with all 30 team owners. According to sources who spoke with The Athletic, one owner yelled, "If sponsors walk, 500 players lose jobs." Corporate sponsors acted swiftly. Gatorade, Microsoft, and State Farm discreetly halted their NBA-related endorsement budgets. The league's annual sponsorship income, estimated at $1.5 billion, vanished almost instantly. The stock prices of betting-related partners fell by 4% within an hour of the FBI's announcement. Chauncey Billups surrendered his passport and was released on bond in Oregon. Terry Rozier did likewise in Florida, using his house as collateral. Both were suspended indefinitely, leaving their teams in disarray. Portland appointed Tiago Splitter as interim coach, while Miami brought up rookie Alondes Williams to take Rozier's place. Billups' lawyer told ESPN that his client had never bet on basketball and had always upheld the integrity of the game. Rozier's attorney dismissed the case as a publicity stunt by prosecutors, but the images were powerful. 2 NBA personalities in handcuffs, shown on a split screen on national television. Meanwhile, fans became amateur investigators. Reddit users unearthed old pictures of Billups at poker tables in Vegas. TikTok creators shared looped videos of Rozier's 2023 game exit as proof that he had feigned an injury. Former players also commented. Tim Donaghy, an ex-referee who was imprisoned in 2007 for betting on games he officiated, tweeted, "Told you it would happen again." The next day, the New York Post's front page read, "NBA House of Cards," featuring a picture of a smiling Billups at a press conference next to one of FBI agents removing evidence from his home. By the afternoon, a league source informed Yahoo Sports that several active players were also being investigated, suggesting the initial indictments were just the beginning. Insiders claim the FBI possesses digital evidence, including group chats and cryptocurrency logs, that connects athletes from 6 different teams. If this is true, the next wave of charges could involve hundreds of players and sponsorship deals. The NBA's financial stability, which was built on the trust of its advertisers, now seemed as precarious as a rigged game. When the arrests were made public, the NBA's corporate sponsors reacted immediately. Within hours, executives from Nike, Coca-Cola, and FanDuel were consulting with their legal departments, all asking the same critical question: can we risk being associated with this? By the end of the week, the consensus was a resounding no. Nike released a brief statement: "We are suspending all active NBA marketing partnerships pending further review of recent developments." In effect, billions of dollars were frozen in an instant. An advertising consultant described the subsequent events to Front Office Sports as the sports industry's equivalent of a bank run. Within 24 hours, State Farm, Tissot, Rakuten, and Gatorade had all suspended their NBA-related advertising budget. For a league with an annual sponsorship revenue of about $1.5 billion, the financial impact was devastating.
Rozier makes $26 million. Him betting, giving people information or taking himself out of games, how much is he gonna benefit taking himself out the game to get unders?
On the evening of October 24th, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver convened an emergency Zoom meeting with all franchise owners. According to sources who spoke with Yahoo Sports, the meeting began with a shaken Silver stating, "We are not facing a PR problem. We are facing an existential crisis." The team owners were irate. An executive from a Western Conference team reportedly yelled, "You said this gambling partnership was safe." Another owner demanded that the league suspend all betting-related sponsorships, fearing more names would be revealed. Silver, looking visibly stressed, informed them that the FBI had indicated more arrests were probable, potentially including active players. That statement, according to insiders, caused the call to devolve into chaos. Within minutes, owners were strategizing for their own survival. Joe Lacob of the Golden State Warriors suggested temporarily separating from the league to host an independent tournament and maintain sponsor relationships. Mark Cuban proposed freezing player contracts until the Justice Department provided more clarity on the investigation's scope. Others, like Jeannie Buss, warned that penalizing innocent players could lead to a union strike. For the first time in many years, the National Basketball Association seemed less like a unified league and more like a group of businesses in a state of collapse. The next morning, the NBPA, the Players Union, demanded answers. Interim President CJ McCollum contacted the league office to inquire about rumors of widespread contract terminations. His legal team had already been informed that several franchises, including Portland, Charlotte, and Miami, were considering using termination for integrity clauses in their standard player contracts. These were not just rumors. Documents later leaked to The Athletic revealed that at least 12 teams had started to review their players' communication records and betting activities. Two front offices even went so far as to request bank statements from agents, invoking emergency league integrity protocol. A prominent agent told Bleacher Report, "They're treating everyone like a suspect." Within a week, over 500 players and coaches were under review, many of whom were not implicated in any wrongdoing but were caught in the fallout. For younger players on non-guaranteed contracts, this meant immediate termination. The NBA's reputation, once a symbol of global prestige, was now associated with corruption. A financial analyst on CNBC stated it plainly, "When Gatorade and Nike walk away, you're not looking at a scandal, you're looking at insolvency." League accountants projected potential losses of $3.8 billion from sponsorship withdrawals, ad cancellations, and pending lawsuits from defrauded bettors. ESPN indefinitely suspended its NBA Countdown show due to legal concern. TNT postponed the next Inside the NBA broadcast, where Shaq and Charles Barkley's passionate condemnation of Billups and Rozier had already gone viral. That clip became a powerful symbol of the public's outrage, a millionaire athlete undermining his own performance for a relatively small amount of illicit money. Fans who once engaged in debates about MVP candidates were now discussing potential prison sentences. The memes and hashtags that flooded social media didn't help, with phrases like "no NBA blackout" and "fix the fix" trending for days. A viral TikTok video showed clips of Billups' arrest interspersed with images of flipping poker cards, with the caption, "The house always wins." On October 26, the beleaguered Adam Silver addressed the media. "Integrity has always been the foundation of this league," he stated. "We will cooperate fully with federal authorities and we will rebuild trust." But the trust was already gone. Reporters questioned him about the NBA's increasing ties to the sports betting industry, partnerships that Silver himself had promoted since the Supreme Court's 2018 ruling that allowed states to legalize sports betting. One journalist asked directly, "Did you sell out the league to the gambling industry?" Silver did not respond. Instead, he announced the formation of an integrity task force, a move that critics dismissed as being 7 years too late. Behind the scenes, FBI sources confirmed to ESPN that investigators were looking into additional players connected to the betting ring through cryptocurrency transactions and anonymous accounts. The more the league attempted to move past the scandal, the more complex the case seemed to become. Federal documents unsealed in late October provided a grim account. Figures associated with the Bowman Nano, Gambino, and Genovese crime families were alleged to have financed and protected the rigged poker operation in which Billups was involved. In one intercepted text message, a suspect boasted, "We got NBA stars bringing in whales. We don't even need casinos." These face cards, as prosecutors referred to them, were not just players, they were decoys. The victims, or fish, paid substantial buy-ins, believing they were competing against sports legends. In reality, every card dealt was known to an off-site operator who relayed information through concealed earpieces and specially designed tables. The mafia collected its share. The Vigan used violence to enforce the collection of debts. The indictment details at least 2 robberies and several instances of extortion involving physical violence. In one case, a victim was pistol whipped for failing to pay his losses from a rigged game. What made this situation unique was the overlap of the same individuals, Damon Jones, Eric Ernest, and reportedly Billups himself in both schemes. The connection between NBA celebrities and organized crime was now undeniable. On Wall Street, the NBA's broadcast partners saw their market value plummet. Warner Brothers Discovery, the parent company of TNT, lost nearly $400 million in market capitalization in just 2 days of trading, primarily due to concerns over its multi-billion-dollar broadcasting agreement. ESPN's parent company Disney issued a profit warning, citing disruptions in advertising related to professional sports. At the same time, sportsbooks in Las Vegas faced their own crisis. DraftKings and FanDuel, which had centered entire marketing campaigns on NBA player props, were now under federal investigation as victims of insider fraud. Their trading algorithms were subpoenaed to identify suspicious betting patterns linked to accounts flagged by the FBI. When investigators found that some bets were placed through foreign cryptocurrency exchanges, the Justice Department expanded its investigation to an international level, involving Interpol and the UK's Gambling Commission. What had begun as a domestic issue now appeared to be a global money laundering operation. While executives debated billions, hundreds of players, many of whom were not involved, were left in a state of uncertainty. Rookie contracts were put on hold. Overseas players planning to join the NBA were informed that their deals were delayed pending integrity checks. The anxiety was felt even among coaches. Portland assistant coach Scotty Brooks publicly stated, "Every day feels like someone else could get a call from the Bureau." On the consumer side, ticket sales dropped by 40% in the week following the arrests. Local economies that depended on NBA arenas began to suffer. Vendors, ushers, and small businesses were affected by cancellations as sponsors withdrew their in-arena advertising. In Portland, where Billups had been a popular figure, over 200 arena employees were laid off. A season that should have started with excitement now felt like the scene of a crime. By the end of October, the league convened what insiders later referred to as the Integrity Summit, a private meeting between NBA executives, team owners, and U.S. Attorney Joseph Nasella. The FBI's presentation was stark. Agents showed images of the evidence they had seized: altered shuffling machines, marked cards, burner phones, and cryptocurrency transaction records. Nasella reportedly said to Silver, "You built an empire on betting access, and your empire just turned on you." To appease regulators, the NBA consented to a temporary league-wide suspension of all its betting partnerships, a decision projected to cost over $800 million in lost revenue. Silver had hoped this would be seen as a gesture of good faith before Congress inevitably launched its own hearings, but the damage was already done. The critical moment came when Gatorade publicly terminated its contract with the league, a partnership that had been in place since their statement was brief but powerful. Effective immediately, Gatorade will discontinue all partnerships with the NBA pending resolution of current investigations. When the public saw those words, any remaining illusion of stability vanished. Broadcast networks began to reduce their NBA coverage mid-season due to a lack of advertisers. 2K Sports indefinitely postponed the release of its annual NBA video game, and Nike canceled its City Edition jersey campaign. The league's once pristine image had become toxic. Analysts at Forbes predicted that if the scandal persisted through the postseason, the league's valuation could fall from $85 billion to less than $40 billion, effectively wiping out nearly 2 decades of growth. The initial court appearances of Billups and Rozier garnered worldwide media attention. Both entered pleas of not guilty. Their attorneys claimed that prosecutors were exaggerating the involvement of celebrities to create a sensationalized mafia story, but the evidence against them was strong. Wiretapped conversations, text messages, and even surveillance footage from a Miami poker room placed Billups with known mob figures. Rozier's digital communications linked his betting associates directly to offshore accounts connected to Danilo Laster, who was already in police custody. Even if they were acquitted of the criminal charges, the NBA's internal policies meant their careers were effectively over. And yet, as the cameras flashed in the courtroom, a larger truth was evident. This was no longer just about them. It was about a league that was collapsing under the pressure of its own ambitions. The trial that ultimately brought down the NBA, the United States Vorizala, began with an atmosphere that felt more like a memorial service for basketball than a legal proceeding. The halls of the Eastern District of New York were filled with journalists, FBI agents, and television cameras. Outside, fans held signs with messages ranging from "Free Billups" to "NBA sold us out." Inside, the man once known as Big Shot sat silently at the defense table, his head down, dressed in the same gray suit he had worn at his Hall of Fame induction ceremony. The irony was palpable. This was supposed to be his opportunity to clear his name. Instead, it became the day the FBI revealed the most significant leak in the history of sport. At 10:47 a.m., the prosecution presented a cart loaded with sealed evidence bags, laptops, cell phones, and poker equipment that had been seized during Operation Royal Flush. U.S. Attorney Joseph Nasella addressed the jury, stating, "The integrity of professional basketball was sold one text message at a time." He then began to show clips and exhibits prepared by the Bureau's Digital Forensics Unit. Among the evidence was a series of encrypted messages between Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and two individuals identified only as Q and H. One message read, "Starters won't suit up tomorrow. That heavy under. We're running clean." The FBI verified the message's timestamp, confirming it was sent on March 23, 2023, the day before Portland's 28-point defeat to Chicago, the very game prosecutors claimed was influenced by a tip from Billups. Then came the most stunning piece of evidence. The prosecution played a surveillance video from a private poker lounge in Miami that showed Billups, Rozier, and Damon Jones at a rigged table with known mob associates. That was the final blow. Overnight, the term NBA Mafia tape became a top trend on social media. Clips from the leaked evidence were shared millions of times, often blurred, re-edited, and narrated by influencers who claimed to have exclusive footage of Billups handling marked cards. Whether the video actually proved any wrongdoing was no longer relevant. The public had seen all they needed to. Midway through the second week of the trial, the prosecution revealed a major development. Terry Rozier had decided to cooperate. Facing a potential 20-year prison sentence, Rozier accepted a plea agreement. He testified that he had intentionally shared information about his injury status and planned game exits in exchange for what he described as quick cash from people I thought were friends. In a quavering voice, he admitted to sending a text to an associate on March 23, 2023, which read, "Take the under on my assists. I'm coming out early." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Reporters furiously took note, and then Rozier made a statement that sent shockwaves through the basketball world. "I wasn't the only one doing it. Coaches knew. Players knew. Sometimes they told us what to say." The defense immediately objected, but the damage had been done. The phrase "coaches knew" became a headline on every major sports news site within the hour. That single statement compelled the NBA to launch new internal investigations into 7 other franchises, including teams in Los Angeles, Dallas, and Milwaukee. What had initially seemed like an isolated issue now appeared to be a systemic problem. As if the league's predicament could not get any worse, an internal FBI memo was leaked to the New York Times. The document, marked confidential, ongoing investigation, league-level exposure, indicated that at least 10 current NBA employees, one of whom was a senior operations executive, were being investigated for potential obstruction of justice, providing tips, or willful negligence. The memo included excerpts from emails in which league officials discussed the public perception of sports betting partnerships. One line read, "We should avoid public comment that implies risk of manipulation. Betting sponsors won't like that." This confirmed what many critics had long believed. The league's embrace of gambling was not a result of naivete, but of a calculated decision to remain silent. When the memo was published, Congress immediately reconvened its hearings. Commissioner Adam Silver was called to testify under oath once more. He entered the chamber with his lawyers, looking much older than his 63 years. Senators questioned him extensively about the league's gambling deals and its lack of transparency. "You personally advocated for betting partnerships," one senator stated. "Did you ever once ask if player data could be exploited?" Silver paused before replying, "We believed our integrity monitoring systems were sufficient." That statement would come to define his legacy. Clips of his hesitant response were replayed endlessly on social media, often with sarcastic captions like "sufficient enough to bankrupt the NBA." The next day, Forbes published a headline that read, "The commissioner who legalized the league's own destruction." Meanwhile, prosecutors had another breakthrough, this time from an informant within the mafia. An associate of the Genovese crime family, known only as Salvatore V, agreed to testify in exchange for placement in the Witness Protection Program. His testimony provided a detailed account of the collaboration. "The basketball guys brought the names. We brought the muscle," he explained. "They called it entertainment. We called it insurance." According to Salvatore, Billups and Jones were first approached at exclusive poker nights. In 2019, they were paid appearance fees, and later, a share of the profits when other celebrity fish joined the game. He described rigged tournaments where cards were identified by hidden sensors, and the information was relayed via encrypted Bluetooth to a remote operator. The players who were in on the scheme used subtle hand signals and chip placements to coordinate their win. The jury was captivated as prosecutors showed FBI reconstructions of these cheating devices. Screens in the courtroom displayed images of X-ray tables with their hidden wiring illuminated, providing concrete proof that the technology was real. Billups' lawyers maintained that he was simply a public figure whose presence was used to lend credibility to the games. However, the prosecution presented bank records showing 5 wire transfers, totaling $126,000 from accounts associated with Damon Jones's shell company, Court Vision LLC. The transfers were described as event fees. During cross-examination, an FBI agent testified that one of these transfers occurred at the same time as a rigged game that generated over $50,000 in illegal profits. When asked if it was possible for Billups to have been unaware of the scheme, the agent responded simply, "Unlikely." After this testimony, observers noted a change in Billups' demeanor. The once confident coach appeared defeated, slumping in his chair with his hands clasped and his face down. Outside the courthouse, the NBA's financial crisis reached a critical point. Sponsorship losses soared to $5.6 billion. Broadcasters began using morals clauses in their contracts to renegotiate their deals, and there were rumors that several franchises, including Charlotte and Portland, were on the market. Fans started to boycott games and demand refunds for their season tickets, referring to the sport as blood money basketball. Merchandise sales fell by 70%. Entire lines of apparel were pulled from stores after Nike and Fanatics canceled their licensing agreements. The once thriving NBA economy was now in a state of collapse. Arena workers were laid off. Developmental leagues were shut down, and even the G League canceled its season. Meanwhile, the NBPA struggled to protect its players' financial interests, but when the union's funds were depleted, the paychecks stopped coming. Stars like Luka Doncic and Jason Tatum publicly criticized the league's leadership, saying, "We didn't do this." They did. What came next was a lockout, not due to a failure in negotiations, but because of financial ruin. In late February 2026, during the third month of the trial, a sealed document related to Project Skyline was entered into the court record. It was an FBI forensic report detailing a hidden server owned by a data analytics firm that the NBA had hired to monitor betting integrity. The shocking revelation was that this very server had been compromised and used by members of the betting ring to get real-time information on injuries and lineups before it was made public. In essence, the league's own anti-corruption system had been turned against it. Emails revealed that NBA tech staff had identified unusual API activity months before the arrests, but had been instructed not to report it. The order came from senior management who were concerned about damaging multi-million-dollar deals with sportsbook companies. The courtroom was silent as the lead FBI agent concluded. The NBA's anti-corruption platform became the corruption platform that, quote, made headlines around the world. Overnight, the stock prices of sports betting companies plummeted again, and Congress introduced the Professional Sports Transparency Act, which would require federal oversight of all betting-related data systems. After 7 weeks of testimony, the jury delivered its verdicts. Terry Rozier was found guilty on one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with his sentence reduced for his cooperation. Damon Jones was found guilty on all charges and received a 22-year sentence. Chauncey Billups was convicted of wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, and ordered to pay $3.1 million in restitution. As the sentence was announced, Billups remained stoic, staring straight ahead. His wife sobbed quietly in the front row. Outside, protesters chanted, with some calling for his freedom and others demanding a lifetime ban for all involved. The NBA officially terminated his contract just minutes later. The Trailblazers franchise, overwhelmed by debt and legal costs, declared bankruptcy 2 weeks after the verdict. In the following months, the consequences continued to unfold. 4 assistant coaches were indicted for their minor involvement in leaking information. 2 executives were charged with obstruction of justice for deleting communication records. And the FBI announced a new phase of its investigation, which would look into potential ties to college basketball, suggesting that there could be crossover cases involving the NCAA. The league's once respected global brand was now a case study in business schools on what not to do. The International Olympic Committee even suspended the NBA's advisory role, citing concerns over its integrity. Adam Silver resigned on April 12, 2026, officially for health reasons, though insiders later revealed the true cause was impending federal subpoenas. By the summer of 2026, a new restructured organization called the NBA Trust was formed, with funding from a group of owners, private equity firms, and the U.S. Department of Justice. The league returned in a smaller format, with 16 teams instead of 30, no betting partnerships, and a federal compliance officer assigned to every front office. Player contracts were revised to include what became known as the Silver Clause, a mandatory acknowledgement that their activities could be federally monitored for any gambling-related issues. Viewership was only half of what it had been, but to some fans, the game felt more authentic. Commentators called it basketball reborn. Scarred but sincere, still the memory of the scandal lingered. Every pre-game show started with a disclaimer. The NBA prohibits all gambling by league personnel. Violations will be prosecuted under federal law. From his prison cell in upstate New York, Chauncey Billups gave a single interview to 60 Minutes. Seated behind a glass partition, he appeared older and more subdued. When asked what had gone wrong, he sighed and said, "They told us gambling would make the game bigger. They never said it would make us smaller." His words served as a somber epilogue for a league that had once represented glory, teamwork, and the pursuit of excellence, but was now remembered for greed, betrayal, and the deal that ultimately broke basketball. The interviewer asked if he had a message for the fans. Billups paused, then whispered, "I'm sorry, not for what they think I did, but for what I helped destroy." The camera held on his face as the credits began to roll. The man who had once made the biggest shots in NBA history was now unable to make the one that mattered most. That concludes this story. For more videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.